All right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog daily vlog 2025, number 11. And today is going to be a little bit late. I completely lost track of the time. And now it's nearly midnight, and I can't see anything. It's nearly midnight, so this is going to be a little bit late. But I've known what I wanted to say for this for a little while, and I've got to, man, my eyes are killing me. Oh. Much better. Okay. Sorry about this, folks. My eyes hurt. All right, much better. So, we had a conversation today during Tears of the Realms, where we brought up Mr. Rogers. If anyone is from outside the U.S., Mr. Rogers was a children's television presenter that literally changed the world. In addition to being probably one of the nicest people that have ever existed, he was unbelievably intelligent and directed that intelligence to creating a children's program called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood did a lot of things that were groundbreaking at the time. Things like during kind of really peak segregation, where swimming pools specifically were segregated. He invited, he had a recurring character, I guess, which was this African-American police officer that I can't remember the character's name anymore. But what he did was he set up this little kind of kiddie pool on the set, and he filled it with water. And basically what happened is he goes, you know what I like to do? Sometimes I like to just soak my feet in the cold water when it's warm like this. And so he took his shoes and socks off, and he just put his feet in the pool. And then the officer came along and said, oh, it's so very hot right now. Would you like to join me in this pool? Which, again, at that point, I don't know if it was illegal or just would cause serious problems. But again, it was during segregation where whites and blacks were not allowed to be in the same swimming pool. And that was becoming this really big ticket topic at that point. And to try and break down those barriers, he couldn't, he didn't go out to an actual swimming pool, but he put a swimming pool on his extremely popular children's television show, and just had the most natural reaction of sharing it with another human being that just happened to be black. So he was absolutely amazing for the things that he did. But one of the other things that a lot of people don't realize is the genesis of Mr. Rogers was actually the solution that Fred Rogers came up to the problem of television. At that point, television was considered to be this really destructive thing for children. Specifically, it would, it caused their brains to rot. It made them stupider. And Mr. Rogers saw the platform of television and thought, there's a lot of good that we could do with it, but no one's really doing it right now. And another children's television show had the same idea of, TV is bad, but we can make it good. And that television show was Sesame Street. However, both television shows took almost diametrically opposed viewpoints on how to transform television into something that could be educational for children. And I can't remember where I read this, but I read once, and again, this is my memory, so take it with a grain of salt. But I read once that Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, specifically stated that he wasn't particularly fond of Sesame Street because of the actual style of program that they did. If anyone is unaware, um, the reason Sesame Street is set up in the way that it is, where you have these little, almost kind of self-contained commercials, for lack of a better term, that are injected at regular intervals. One of my favorites was this animated pinball the thing, where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Do 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 12 is a super cool the thing. The reason that they did that was children's attention spans, because they were watching television and because television would break away to ads as often as it did. It does it significantly more now than it did then. But it was actually affecting children's attention spans, and it was starting to affect their ability to learn and things like that, because when they would go to school and they'd have the exact same thing going on for, an hour or two at a time, well, their attention span from television was teaching them that, no, we can't watch one coherent thing for an hour. It has to be broken up into tiny little pieces. And so, because that was the way that children's brains were starting to interact with the world, Sesame Street decided, okay, we're going to take advantage of the fact that that's the way people are going, and we're going to design our programming around that. Mr. Rogers was the exact opposite. He thought that was detrimental. He thought that it would be impossible for children to function in modern society if their attention span got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. We can see the results of that now. And so Mr. Rogers created a television show that was one kind of congruent thing, that everything kind of bled together, and there really were no hard jump cuts or anything aside from when they would jump to the neighborhood of make-believe, or if they'd watch something on Picture or something like that. If you have no idea what I'm referencing, it was stuff on the show, all right? So, yeah, the two ideas were kind of diametrically opposed. Sesame Street was like, this is the way that kids are going, so we're going to adapt to what's happening. And Mr. Rogers was like, no, I'm going to do the thing that I think will be most beneficial by resisting this move towards something that I see as detrimental. And when we talk about business in general, like, these are two business plans that are really common. And we actually see it on YouTube as well. Are you going to come into YouTube seeing how everything works and just kind of jump onto what already works and modify your content to fit with what already works? Or are you going to come in and design your content around what you think is best and wait for YouTube or the audience specifically to come around to your idea? And both ways can work. They just have to be approached very differently. And the interesting thing about Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, I would assume that if there was some kind of animosity between the two groups, they buried it eventually, because Mr. Rogers appeared on Sesame Street. But both channels had children's and early education experts on it that were directing how things were said and how things were set up. They just took two very different approaches, and both were very effective. To be perfectly honest, the only reason that Sesame Street is still going and Mr. Rogers isn't is Mr. Rogers passed away. And there's never been another Mr. Rogers. Now, there are still programs that are run under the same kind of banner. Like there was Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood that I can't remember if that's still going on and then going on or not. And then there was another one that came out as well. So it's not like the Mr. Rogers' idea just died with him, but the advantage that Sesame Street has over Mr. Rogers is they were never. The characters that drive the show are Muppets. And Muppets, if an actor dies or something like that, you can just replace them. And so they have that longevity, which is why I believe they're currently the longest running children's television program, definitely in the States. I don't know if it's worldwide. But I just found that really, really fascinating, especially after talking about what we have been involving, like YouTube channels and turning your hobby into business and everything like that. You know, that's a decision that you have to make. Are you going to try to create your own niche with a style of content, or are you going to do your research, figure out what works on the platform, and then perfect that particular style? Like I said, both of them work. When we look at things like I've told this story before, John Bain, also known as Total Biscuit, he didn't follow the algorithm. He created the content that he wanted to create, and eventually the algorithm caught up to him. However, if you look at other things like John and Hank Green, they have been absolutely excellent at looking at what YouTube likes and what YouTube doesn't like, and matching their content to what does best on YouTube. The reason that John and Hank's vlogs that they did, that I think they still do, were always under 4 minutes, was because 4 minutes was the longest amount of time that you could have a video that the algorithm would like when they first started out. So again, it's not impossible to do either way. I have said quite a few times on here that chasing the algorithm is a bad idea, and it is. However, there's a difference between chasing the algorithm and trying to always stay in front of it, and doing your research and figuring out what works well on the platform. And like I said, I think John and Hank Green are a really, really fantastic example of people that did that really, really well. And I think they continue to do that. I have not watched their content in years, so I don't know how well they're doing that nowadays. But I mean, John is a published author that's won a bunch of awards, if I remember correctly. Like, he's doing super well, whether YouTube's doing good or not. And I haven't the foggiest idea what Hank is doing anymore. But yeah, like I said, I thought it was really, really interesting, because the same battle that they were having in, you know, the 50s and 60s is the same battle that we're having now. With entertainment in general. Are you going to ride the wave of what's going on? Are you going to create another superhero movie? Are you going to try to make your own cinematic universe and ride those coattails? Or are you going to try and do something completely unique and different? Like I said, both ways work. They just have to be approached in very, very different ways. And my personal opinion is, if you focus too much on what is popular now, especially with how quickly trends change nowadays, I think you're going to be fighting a losing battle. So if you are going to try and do I'm going to see what works now and create content that works in that setting, understand that you can't be looking at tiny little cuts of what's working right now. You need to look at a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and watch how the trends change and create your content around that. Or again, you can go the other route and go, no, I'm going to create the content that I think is most valuable, and I will let the audience come to me, as opposed to chasing the audience. It's interesting. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Let me know, first of all, if you grew up with The Neighborhood, or watching Sesame Street, or both. Let me know in the comments down below. And what are your ideas on, the idea of create content that works with the current trends, or create your own content and wait for the trends to catch up to you? Comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today. We'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.